So a component of the American dream is knowing what you're doing, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I could want to be a singer, but that's not going to work. One of my questions, and I wonder if other people might share this question, is how did you know? How did you know that you would be able to learn how to blend? Because that must be pretty tricky,
Well,
learning how to blend.
Yeah, I think, during that period, back in the early 70s, 80s, there wasn't that much of an emphasis on blending for the simple reason that here in Miami, there were basically only maybe, 3, 4 types of tobacco. There was Dominican, Matafina, Cameroon, maybe Connecticut, broadleaf wrappers. So there wasn't that much as far as fillers and binders, that was available. I think the challenge really came about after, but I would say by 1990, I started to, look at Nicaraguan tobacco. And this was, the grandfather of, a great friend of ours, David Perez. They had a farm in Nicaragua where they grew wrapper. And then they decided to take that business to Ecuador. And now they're one of the biggest, wrapper growing, tobacco growers in the world, as far as wrapper is concerned. So I spoke to Silvio Perez, and I asked him if he would grow some Nicaraguan tobacco. This was about 1990, I think it was. So he did, and that's when I started, experimenting with the tobaccos that we had, the Dominicans, the Ecuadorian, Sumatra, which we've been using for a lot, for a long time, thanks to the Oliva family. And I started blending with that, and that's when, we got in 1992 when we got our, ratings kind of, we that was like one of the first times we used that tobacco. So it was not. During that period from 1992 till we sold the company, it was basically, just making, excuse me, Gloria Cubanas, Serie R, the cigars that we were, that were in demand, like Gloria Cubana, white box. So I have to say, then we sold the company, and then
we're here talking about La Gloria Cubana.
La Gloria Cubana,
the
right?
Company that owned that trademark.
Right.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
So a lot of the blends that you were making before you brought in the Nicaraguan tobacco, were those already blended by your dad before you?
Pretty
or did
much,
you tweak
pretty much.
them at all, or?
Well, they were blended. I did tweak a few. I did start working. I remember when I took over in 1980, I started working with, different binders like broadleaf binders, just experimenting them by myself. Started working with the percentage of tobaccos. At one time, the norm was, you blended based on percentage. And the reason was because, the plant usually will give you like 40% secos, 40% visos, and 20% ligeros. So I started experimenting with that, changing the percentage, instead of, let's say, 40% seco, I would use maybe 20%. And, so I started by using the same tobaccos, the same Dominican tobaccos and the, the Brazilian tobaccos. And then when I started using the Nicaraguan tobacco, I started implementing some of those percentages into them. And that's something that I've always tried to keep in mind. You have to blend based on what the plant is going to produce. And it depends on, the area, the seeds, and, that type of thing. But, usually you try to keep a percentage that you're going to be able to have a consistent blend and consistent inventory of tobaccos. Sometimes we'll go off and do different things, and then, unfortunately,
some of them taste horrible?
Well, yeah, a lot of the blends that we've made, you got to figure we make, and you see this, how many blends come in every week with it, when I come back.
I know. You're hard to please.
I'm very hard, yes.
Your own blends too.
Yeah.
The proportions.
Exactly. So I started, experimenting with different percentages, then got to the point where I just forgot about the percentages and just blended based on the taste, the profile, the strength, the flavors, that I wanted to achieve in the blends.
Okay.
So during that period, it was, I guess you could say, it was kind of easier. And I guess really what made the difference between the different, companies that were at that time here in Miami was the fact that, I guess it was all marketing, you want to call it, or a desire to make it, or just be take action. I read a book the other day. It's about massive action, and this was how bad did you want this? And I was lucky because I was probably at that time I was one of the younger ones here in Miami. So we made a hard drive at really. I mean, that was my obsession. Being at least here in Miami, being the best.
And how about the big ring gauges? When did that come
Well,
into
that
play?
came about early.
Because you're known as one of the pioneers
Right.
of bigger ring gauge cigars.
Yeah.
So how old were you?
Well, that was back in 96, 97. And the reason that came
So
about.
still relatively young guy?
Yeah. So the way that I was like 40 something, right? Yeah. So the way that came about, I remember.
Wait, but didn't you make a big ring gauge
Before.
like in 1982 for a?
Well, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. You were really young.
Yeah.
Really young.
Yeah. That
That's
was
the one I'm talking about because
Right.
everybody knows about Serie R and now
Right.
with Nicaraguan Inch. I'm talking about that time.
Well, that one, there was a motorcycle club, and they smoked cigars. So they came through a friend of through a gentleman that worked with us. They came in and they said, we want to make a cigar that we can, ride from here to Fort Lauderdale, wherever, and not have to, So they requested I think it was a 7x70 and a 6x66, I believe it was. So at that time, there were no molds for that, so we had to make them by hand. We had one gentleman that used to make those by hand. And so that was like the first time I really delved into that big green gauges.
Was it hard?
Well, it was, it wasn't hard because, even before that, a lot of the little factories, we'd make those big cigars like, 10 by 80 or 10.
Okay.
Or 10 whatever, or 11 or whatever. Because people would come by and, once in a while they say, I need something that big. I pay like $5 for it, $10, which was huge at that time. But
Is it hard to make it taste good?
Well,
Or you kinda knew what to
like
do?
I said, at that time we weren't really thinking about, when we made those, I guess you could say touristy cigars, we weren't thinking about, we're just thinking about the size of the
I
cigar.
remember one of them now actually
Yeah,
came
yeah.
to mind when you brought it up
Yeah.
right now. A huge one.
Yeah.
The biggest cigar I've ever seen.
Yeah.
remember
They
that.
used to make it like 10 inches, I think, or 9 inches or something like that. And then, when this thing came about, we made those cigars, and, later we got into the Serie R, And that was basically what really, changed the company as a whole.
And so how about now with Carrillo? Now that you live the American dream and now you even have your kids on board with you in this company that we started in 2009. You've been doing this for more than 50 years.
Right.
Are you still challenged when you blend?
I am very challenged, and the reason for that is because, there's so much great tobacco out there. Like even this tobacco, this cigar, this was something that I think was a something new for us, where we use two types of, different American tobaccos. And so, there's always those type of challenges. How do you blend something that is, going to be different? Like when we make the big ring gauges, how's that going to be different than what, people are used to? So I think this has some of that in there, where it's a different type of smoke than most people that love our cigars are used to. So it's going to be interesting to see. So far I think the response has been incredible, and I'm myself enjoying it. So I'm very optimistic.
I remember when we got the #1 cigar with the Encore Majestic in 2018. We also had the number 2 cigar with the E3 La Historia, and then with the Pledge Prequel in 2020. And in that one, the highest rating that at that point had been given to any cigar of the year, the 98 rating.
Right.
Did you feel differently, or did you feel kind of like, wow, now I am, a 98 rated, master blender, or was that to you the same as, maybe some other cigars that didn't get such a high rating, meaning in the blood, sweat, and tears you put into it?
Well,
in other words, do you consider that the pinnacle of your career? Or which cigar, I guess, is the pinnacle for you?
Well, when I get 100. that would be the pinnacle.
Okay. Yeah. But do you have a personal favorite that you feel like, wow, I made this?
I have to admit, it's I love all 3 of those cigars. Don't get me wrong. I love those 3. But I think the cigar that I think you could see that I could see, the change was the Encore.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really the one that I think. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the Pledge. I love La Historia. La Historia is like, it still is one of the best, selling cigars. And it also depends on the mood. Like, I can smoke an Encore all the time, fine, and I'll enjoy it. La Historia I like to smoke here in the lounge with, And then the Pledge, it's a cigar that's really to be smoked, I think, for myself, when you really have that time to really, not analyze, but, just that free moment for yourself.
Yeah. We got 2 of those cigars in the top 25.
Yeah.
Apogee also.
Yeah, Apogee, that's a great smoke. I love it.
So look out for Pledge of Allegiance.
Please.
And,
something new, something different. And I think, this is just the beginning of many more great blends to come.
Well, thank you for sharing your experience with us.
It's a pleasure, always. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.